Hey everyone, so I wanted to open this package that I got from Jackson's a while back, and it's been sitting in my art studio. So these are Sennelier paints. The only Sennelier I've ever owned were the student grade ones. I think they're called like Petite or something. I don't know, Petite Aquarelle. But a while back, Jackson's had a sale. Oh, they really wrapped this thing. They had a sale on Sennelier paints. So I decided it was now or never. By the way, if you order anything from Jackson's, they take their packaging seriously, which is a good thing. So I did finally purchase some Sennelier professional watercolors. Now, these are the artist grades, so they're the L'Aquarelle, and I'm trying to remember what the student grade one is now. Well, I can't remember. I was going to look for them, but then I remembered I had given them away. So, this was, like I said, on sale. It is a set of 12 tubes. They are honey-based, so that means they're going to be a little stickier. Not a lot. It makes them easier to re-wet. This set is kind of like their basic set, but it comes with a pretty good range of colors, to be honest. Cadmium yellow, French vermilion, alizarin crimson, opera rose, permanent magenta, something blue, I can never say that name, turquoise green, hooker's green, gold ochre, burnt umber, VanDyke brown, and Payne's gray. So this is a pretty well balanced palette, actually. So let's check this out. I love the box. I didn't even know it came in a metal tin. Oh, it's hard to get out of the box, though. Maybe that's why I have that. Whew. So this is interesting. Okay. This is my first time with these. So this is just a little, looks like, pamphlet about all of their products. All right. Oh, nifty. Oh my gosh, this is actually really cute, because if you want to work straight from the tube, you could literally just store these in here, put a little bit on here, and even if it dries, you can still, you know, play around with it. In fact, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 slots, but one thing that would be kind of nice is if you just put little dollops here and then pulled and mixed it up here. But yeah, because look, I mean, it's even got the little things holding it in there. So that's pretty cool. This could like go on the go. I don't tend to enjoy using paint fresh from the tube. That's how I swatch, but that's because I'm too lazy to sit there and wait for it to dry. The reason for that is, one, the color is a lot more concentrated. You end up using more paint than you would if you wait till it dries. So you go through it a little faster, but it's just one of those things. So let's see. This is a nice, cute little silver tube, and it says gold ochre, number 257. On the back, it does say the pigments. I think that says it's not rated on that one. Well, there's 3 stars there, so maybe that's what the... Yeah, okay. So the star rating on the front is its light fast rating, and it's conformed. They used ASTM. So that's light fast 1. But yeah, it looks like we have our pigment info, and then it also has its transparency rating from the looks of it. Yep. So this is going to be an opaque color, whereas this is going to be a transparent color. Now, are there any single pigment colors? Like this one might be a single pigment. Yep, PY35. Wow, these tubes are cold. Is the red? Yep, the red is PR242. Sometimes you'll know what's going to be a single pigment color. Nope, their alizarin crimson isn't. I doubt. Let's see. PB19. Okay, so that one is. The blue might be. Yep, it is PB153. Turquoise. I doubt it, but let's see. Well, that's wrong. It is a single pigment. I know the green's not. Rare, I mean, greens are usually mixes. It's rare. Let's see. This one is PBR7, so that's pretty good. Burnt Umber. Their Van Dyke Brown has PBK7 in it. Okay, good to know. It's pretty typical, though, by the way. And then their Payne's Gray. So we got a couple single pigments and then a few mix. But these will be fun to play with. And I had, in that same purchase, gotten this little ceramic thing. So let's see. I like to collect ceramic palettes. It's normally what I'll put my paints on from tubes when I'm swatching them and testing them out. Oh my gosh. This thing is huge. Well, let's check out this palette while we're at it. This thing, by the way, was wrapped multiple times in that paper stuff that wrapped these, but then also like 5 layers of bubble wrap. And these two things, which are really small, came in a huge box because then they were also wrapped together in a ton of protective packaging. So, like I said, Jackson's actually cares that things make it to you in one piece. I'm gonna have to cut this out of the box. Hold that thought. Okay, and we're back. All right, so this is the ceramic set I got from Jackson's. Now, the reason I wanted to get this is, like I said, for tube paint, I like to, you know, put it on a palette, or I'll put it in a half pan, full pan, whatever. But in this case, this is a really nifty ceramic palette. And now this one is meant to be more long-term. Like I have some palettes that I just use to mix on, and it's just there for that project. But this one, you can actually fill each well with the color you want. So you can even put your brush here, or if you wanted to, put more paints there. But this is your mixing, and then when you're done, you put it on top like this, and then that way everything stays covered, so no dust or hair or anything gets on these paints. So that's what I really wanted, because then I could put some tube paints in here that say I want to just keep on my desk and play with and not mess with little half pans or whatnot. Or if there's like a set I'm really testing out, or I don't know, something. I just wanted to try one. And this is a pretty decent sized mixing area. And this, of course, I can just keep washing off when I need to, if I run out of mixing space. But yeah, I thought this was pretty nifty. So most ceramic palettes are just open. So like you need to either cover it with something or clean it off, because you're going to get dust and hair into those paints. All right. So what we're going to do, I am going to pause the video, but for you, it won't even seem like I did. I'm going to get these into my Etcher cold press 100% cotton sketchbook, watercolor sketchbook that I love to use. I'm going to probably use my stamps from Erite just to make little tubes, because I think that would be fun. And then I'm also going to fill out all the information. I always write the pigment info in my swatch chart, and you should too. Whether you're new to watercolor or not, it's really good to know what pigments you're working with. Because if you were to say, like, go mix them, say I made a half pan of this, I'm not going to put that information on my half pan. That's way too much writing for such a small space. I'll just, like, go to my swatch book and see that I'm using Sennelier's Hooker's Green, and then I'll look at my swatch chart and see what pigments are in there. And it's important you know the pigments if you're going to mix your colors. If you're just going to use these straight as is, guess it's not a big deal, but most of the time we end up mixing our colors, and you need to know what you're mixing. Also, not every company uses the same pigments to make the same name of a color. There's some, you know, for Hooker's Green, for example, not every brand is going to use this exact amount, or I mean exact pigments, but also not the same amount of those pigments. So basically what I'm getting at is you need to know what you're playing with before you play with it. So that's why I write it down. I don't write down these numbers because this is just Sennelier's number. I don't care too much about that. I will, however, write down the light fast ratings, Not that I sell anything for commission work, but it's still good to keep track of and know what paints have a really good light fast rating in case someday I do. So let me go fill out my sketchbook. Okay, so I just put all of those watercolors here like I had said I was going to do, and then dolloped the two that didn't fit. But I might actually like keep the tin as it is. We'll see. I don't know. So I have everything stamped out in my Etcher cold press sketchbook. I use those stamps from Arete that I often feature on my channel. If I remember, I'll try to link it. If not, it's out there somewhere. And then I have them all listed basically in the order the tubes are right now inside their case. So I am going to be swatching today with a number 8 Princeton Neptune. And then I just have my little paint puck here. I highly suggest you get one of these if you do watercolor, acrylics, oil, anything. Maybe not oil, but I really like the paint puck because it cleans off the bristles of my brush really well. And yeah, like you can even use it when it's got like the dirtiest of water. And the only time I ever use clean water is if I'm going to do a wash, but I don't usually do washes because I like to paint wet to dry, which brings me to my next point. You should always swatch on paper that is typical to what you paint on. I usually paint on an Etcher cold press larger sketchbook than this. This is the smallest one they have. Actually, they might have smaller, but my swatches are all on this smaller version of the big version I use. And then I use brushes that I typically paint with. And then I also swatch paints the way I use them. And like I said, honestly, 99% of the time, if I'm using watercolor, it's wet to dry. Rarely do I do wet on wet. Honestly, I can't even think of the last time I did wet on wet. And then, yeah, I typically go wet to dry. So that's how I want to swatch them and see how the colors look. Okay. Yeah, enough of that. Let's zoom you in because I want you to see the colors. Now, you'll notice in my swatches, I'm trying to find a decent place to put my colors. There we go. Okay. You'll notice in my swatches here, I just have the name and the pigment. That's really all I put down. I don't write down the opacity, transparency rating, or the light fast, simply because I don't do commission work, so I don't really care about the light fast at the moment. Plus, you know, I just Google it. But the reason I don't write down the transparency rating is I want to see how transparent it is based on the way I use it. So, I mean, a paint could be listed as semi-opaque. I'm going to start swatching while I tell you this. So a paint could be listed as semi-opaque, but it also depends on how you use it. So, like, because I do, I'm going to need a little more water there. Because I do wet to dry, you know, I am going against a dry, thirsty paper here. So I purposely go out of the lines, as you can see here, because I will see how much of that stamp shows through once this dries. I don't even consider it until it dries. All right, so now let's get on to French Vermilion. I could stay in the lines up here and then get messier down here. And this is PR 242. It's not too bad. Sometimes I like to make it look like it's coming out of the little tube, but I'm not feeling that artsy today. All right, this is the Alizarin Crimson. This is PR 209, PY 83, and PR 179. That's a really pretty color. Okay. Let's see if I can move this up a little. All right, now we are on to Opera Rose. Often I lean towards the Daniel Smith version, but I do want to see what theirs is like. So PR 81 1, and then a fluorescent It's definitely an Opera Rose color. Okay, permanent magenta. I've got my stamps going all sorts of different ways. It's just helps them fit on the page and looks fun. More fun to watch. This is PV19. Ooh, I like that one. I do. Kind of reminds me of a quinacridone magenta, but it's really pretty. Okay, phthalo blue. These paints are sticky. I can just feel it when I'm like picking them up. Now they are wet and fresh from the tube, but like you can feel how sticky they are. Not saying that's a bad thing, just something to note. I can feel it tugging on my brush. All right, this is the turquoise green. Might have added too much water to this though. Let's find out. Yeah, let me dab off my brush. So that's PG50. But you can definitely feel the honey. That's what's creating that stickiness in these. Okay, Hooker's Green, PY83 and PG36. It's really hard to write neat on 100% cotton paper. I do stamp these with, ooh, that's nice. I like that one. I do stamp these with a pigment ink, so the ink won't move with the water. And then the same thing, I use a pigment liner to write. So you want to keep that in mind when you're creating a swatch book. So this is PY119, PY42, and PY83 for that gold ochre. That's a lovely color. And I can actually see some flecks of it in the paint. Might not come through on camera. I don't know if you guys can see those flecks, but that'll be interesting to see how that one dries out. Never judge a color wet. Watercolor wet. All right, let's try this burnt umber, PBR7. Ooh, I like that one too. It's a very nice color. All right, VanDyke Brown, PBK7. And then PR101. Ooh, this is really nice and rich. I really like that one. I know it looks pretty opaque right now. And in all fairness, I'm pretty sure on the tube they had this. Yep. They did have it as an opaque color. But we'll see what it looks like once it dries. Because right now you don't see the lines. But it still will come through when it dries. Okay, Payne's Gray. So PB19, which is what they use for their permanent magenta. PB15-1, and then PBK7, which is also over in our VanDyke Brown. Payne's Grays are fun. They have a blue tint to them. So you can see kind of that blue in there. And I just love playing with Payne's Grays. I love to see the different formulations companies create. It is a really pretty color, and it's fun for mixing. I'm gonna give you that. Okay, so we have all of our little tubies swatched out, but these are wet. Even our cadmium yellow over here is still wet. So I'm going to pause and use my Ranger heat tool and just dry the watercolors. If you're new to watercolors, I would either use an embossing heat gun or the Ranger heat tool. You can use a, hair dryer on low, but you need to keep in mind a hair dryer is blowing air. Like its physical job is to blow air, which means if you just say a lot of wet on wet, or you have a very wet paint, it's going to move that paint. Is it going to like move it everywhere? No, not unless you're on high and watch it go woo. But that's why I use the heat tool. And it's also like super quiet. See how quiet that is? So I can watercolor at night and not wake up the kids. All right, so I'm gonna dry these and then we'll be back. Okay, so for the most part, these are fairly dry. I mean, there's still a little bit of wetness here and there, but they're dry enough to actually judge them. So overall, like getting this as a set, this isn't too bad of a range of colors, making sure I'm all the way in frame. I do kind of feel like they were trying to give you like a broad range of colors for your little starter set here. So that's why you do have some single pigments. Now, we do have a good blue. This red is all right, but I don't know. It's not a red I would prefer to use. And then we have a yellow. So we have our primary colors, which we then can mix together and make plenty other colors, along with mixing the colors here we have as well. Yeah, I just don't know if I like the French Vermilion. It's definitely more orange leaning, but that's okay. So if you were to mix these two, you would obviously get a way different color than mixing these two. One day I'll do a mixing chart and show you guys what I mean. So yeah, I mean, it's not bad for like, say, a mixing, they don't advertise it as a mixing set, but it gives you a good range of colors that you could mix. Aside from those primaries, I do really like this permanent magenta, which would mix in really nice with quite a few colors in here, including mixing it into my Hooker's green, my cadmium yellow, my phthalo blue. I can even mix it into my opera rose and get something a little prettier. The turquoise green I feel the least impressed with, if I'm going to be completely honest. I just wasn't very impressed with the color or the performance of the color. So I'm going to see what it's like. I'll try it again later. But yeah, I'm not very impressed. And I love turquoise. It's actually my favorite color. But yeah, for this being in this set, I just feel like they could have put something else there. So like another green, because I'm lazy. I don't like to mix my greens. Or give me like another blue so I could have like a cool and a warm blue or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. Just felt like it was a wasted tube there. I love this gold ochre. I love their Hooker's green. Their burnt umber is really nice. The VanDyke brown is opaque, just as promised. However, near the end of my tubey here, you can tell I had less pigment, more water by the time I got to the end with my brush. And so it became more opaque, or not opaque, more transparent, but it is still quite opaque. The Payne's Gray is really lovely. When it dries, you can see some of the blue coming through, but not a ton. It's actually quite a rich Payne's Gray, if I'm going to be honest. That said, I would like to water that one down at another date and see what it would look like. But Opera Rose, I would have honestly rather had something different in this set than Opera Rose. I know a lot of people love Opera Rose, but I would have rather had like a quinacridone of some kind, quinacridone pink, or, you know, and just another pink. Opera Rose is just so bright, and I'm not a big fan of it, but I know a lot of people do love it. However, considering how expensive Sennelier is, and even this set being on sale at Jackson's, I honestly would have rather had these two colors swapped for something more useful, because when I look at a set like this, I want to buy it and be like, okay, I don't have to go buy other Sennelier tubes. I could mix it and make it work. And I just don't want this super highlighter-ish pink going on. And same thing with this turquoise green. So I wish they would have given me another blue and either a different pink here or even a different, I don't know. I really like all these other ones. So yeah, a different pink. But I think the set would have been a lot better balanced had they done it that way. But the paints themselves, really pretty. I love the way they dry. Very smooth, no chalky feel whatsoever. I mean, the color is breathtaking. They just soaked into that cotton paper. I love the way this one has some little tidbits in it too. I really do like the granulation that comes out on that one. So it's not a bad set. For the price though, if I was going to go back and buy Sennelier paints, I don't think Sennelier has a dot card. So that's one problem with them. I don't remember buying a dock card for them. But yeah, I would definitely not like to get PG-50. There's something up with my tube on this one. Maybe I have a bad tube, or that's really how their PG-50 comes out, but it's quite ugly. Another thing I'm going to test is, so like I said, I put the tubes, I just did little dollops in here, and I was going to leave it. Now, because these are honey based, there's a lot of paints that are honey based, but it's always curious to see how they dry. M. Graham, for example, M. Graham paints are honey. Did I say honey based? I meant honey binder. M. Graham uses a honey binder. And the one thing with M. Graham that anyone who's used M. Graham will know, those things do not dry. They just stay sticky all the time. And if you accidentally put too much on your paper, that's going to be sticky too. So I'm kind of curious. I want to see how the Sennelier dry in here. Like, are they going to dry hard? So if I were to put them in a half pan, I always like to test that, because like with my M. Graham colors, if I want to use an M. Graham paint, I often need to put it in a palette that I know can close, and just make sure and be very cautious that I keep it closed, because sticky paints mean dust and everything sticks to it basically the longer it's open. And I try to avoid that, and I just often use my M. Graham straight from the tube just because of that. And so I'm curious if these will dry well, or if these are type of paint that you need to use like from the tube. If it's a paint where you have to use it from the tube, and with this price tag, you're going to go through it a lot quicker. So that's something I always like to test out with paints that I get in the tube form. That was a really long way of saying that. All right, but yeah, overall, the Sennelier, I mean, were really nice. They were smooth. I have no complaints other than I just don't like some of the color selections they put in this palette, but color selections are completely a personal choice. Some people would find this and love it. Other people might disagree with me and hate like Hooker's Green and the Permanent Magenta I like. So it's a very personal observation on that front, because I just personally would have rather swapped these two for something more useful. But I do a lot of florals, and yes, you could use Opera Rose for florals. I just don't, because it's not my style. So that's that point to keep in mind. Considering or comparing these to all the other brands I own, Schminke, Roman Schmal, Winsor & Newton, M. Graham, I've got them all. Dollar Rowney. I honestly don't think I'll buy more Sennelier paint. They are expensive, but I wasn't like swatching this going, oh, this is going to totally beat out my Daniel Smith or my Winsor & Newton of this same pigment. I didn't get that feel. Whereas like, say I'm swatching Roman Schmal or Schminke, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love these paints. They like blow this brand out of the water. So yeah, I probably won't buy any more Sennelier. Plus, I have too many watercolors as it is. I could pretty much fund my own art school and still have plenty left over, I think. But yeah, so I don't know. But if you're new and you aren't like me and you don't have like a ton of watercolor paints and tubes from random brands, because you don't have a YouTube channel where you're showing and testing all these brands, then you might like Sennelier. But buy them on sale for sure. And I would suggest considering the colors in the tubes in those sets, and possibly just buy them open stock, unless you don't mind the color array that you have here. I will leave a link to this specific set I bought in the description below to Jackson's. It is an affiliate link. All I get is a little credit to use at Jackson's, which is always nice, but it doesn't cost you any extra, but you're not obligated by any means to use that link. All right, well, now that I have said that, I am going to get going, and hopefully these will dry. But until next time, everyone, take care. Bye now.